Greetings, this is Ras Shiloh. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right, sir? Ras Shiloh said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right, sir?
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that in Ethiopia, there are several types of marriages. Okay, so I think that that's important to acknowledge. You have civil marriages, you have traditional, marriages, and then you have your church marriage. So Haile Selassie in his autobiography is very clear to state that the marriage between Waziri Yeshimabet Ali, his mother, and Ras Makonnen was that of a church marriage. So clearly, he viewed that marriage as to be the most sacred of the three. So it's important to make that distinction. So His Majesty's autobiography also mentions his view towards marriage. And in it, he speaks about himself as well as his advisors, thinking that at the age of 19, after being given the governorship of Harar, after having a stable governorship, right, that it was decided that it was now time for him to marry. So he was married previously. And so that marriage resulted in a daughter, but that marriage was not a church marriage. Okay, so that marriage was probably a traditional marriage or a civil marriage. All right, so deciding that he would marry Empress Menen and that this type of marriage would be one that he would put at the level of church was very important. But it was thought out. The fact that he even mentioned it, and not that just in 1911, and I think that's important too for us to commemorate the day, July 31st, 1911. And so not just to say that at the age of 19 I got married, but to say that there were certain steps. There is something else. Let's talk about this really quickly. And we get this from the Empress's grandson or great grandson's autobiography. I think it's called King of Kings, when he talks about the fact that when Haile Selassie was about to ascend the throne, that he was being advised or considering not ascending the throne with Empress Menen, but ascending the throne with a woman who was considered by certain standards as more beautiful. And so during that time, Haile Selassie makes a decision to ascend the throne, as we know, with Empress Menen. So even and that was a tough time. That was a tough situation, because by
Okay,
that
this is
time,
brand new. This is brand new information for I don't know this piece of
oh,
history. Yes.
I stopped the reading Ross just a little bit. Now I thought that maybe because I'm always trying to predict the mind of the reading Ross. So I thought that when you mentioned that you were saying gonna go towards some of these young child brides in Rastafari. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Because there at one point was a trend, maybe it has tapered off some now, where a lot of younger women were being brought into the liberty by older men. And I don't mean 5 years older. I'm talking about 20 years and things
Mhm.
of that such. Okay, well, first I want to say that this issue that we're discussing isn't a new one. I wrote this book, Roaring Lionesses, in 2011. So in it, I interview 28 Rastafari women. So as I was preparing for this, I thought about one of the word sounds of one of the sistrins. So I'll just read it really quickly. She says, I know a lot of sistren right now out there, including I, who don't have a king. Maybe it's the trod. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure. I just feel like we are not being approached by the kings. It seems like they prefer the bald head woman. Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head with those because especially from a woman's perspective, I hear the economics a lot too. I hear, Rastafari brethren at one point, were dealing with certain things. You know what I'm saying? When it came to economics,
Her
and
money a flow. Her money a flow like
yeah,
rain. Yes.
right. And during that time there, things was okay. You know what I'm saying? But then as that began to dry up, and more sistrins entered the workforce, you know, um, the brethren, it seemed like a lot of them didn't find alternative careers. You know what I'm saying? So now you have somebody who used to be a big gun, big money gun, right? Now he's just sitting around the house and being a live at home dad, and the cistern is out there. And so when you have a change in dynamics like that, you're going to have a change in the relationship. And I hear so many cistern talk about the fact that, they're out there hustling and hustling hard. And now they're beginning to actually feel masculine. I think that we do need to really and truly sit down and talk about economics, talk about lifestyle, exactly how is it that the couple wants to live. You know what I'm saying? If the sistren, wants a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house, and the brethren is cool, with a shanty, it's not going to work. You understand? And I mean, really and truly, you have, and then unfortunately, one begins to make the other feel a way about his or her desires, and all of those things contribute to, the frustration that's happening within the Rastafari liberty. Another thing, too, is timing. I mentioned on someone else's show, I don't know if it was one of the I's interviews, but talked about this idea of a dating protocol, just like the sister in the book mentioned. And so I talked about it, and it's termed Ye Selassie Sib Saba. Okay, and so Ye Selassie Sib Saba in Amharic translates pretty much into a trinity of meetings, right? And so along each of these meetings or these purposeful connections, there should be things that are discussed, so that outline should already be there. We're going to talk about economics. We're going to talk about child rearing. We're going to talk about repatriation. We're going to talk about whether one works outside of the household and what does that look like, right? And we're going to talk about, do we want to be married legally or do we want to have a commitment ceremony? We want to talk about our living, is one a fruitarian and the other one, is a raw foodist. I mean, what does all of this look like, right? And so I think that, couples, potential couples, right, should take the time to really and truly identify these 3 particular meetings. Think about it as a Solomon and Sheba kind of vibration. Well, definitely a Rastafari brethren would be my preference. Okay. A brethren who has done that self work that I talked about, a brethren who is able to to be compassionate, right? To be overstanding and know that growth is inevitable, right? And so that both the man and the woman in the relationship should grow. A brethren who has planned for his future, right? So that he's not just thinking about now because, there's a possibility that we may become one. Now he's trying to step it up, right? Because more than likely it's going to be difficult. So someone who is planned, someone definitely who emulates first. I should have started off with this first, Haile Selassie the first, in all things, right? Who looks at his selected speeches and knows the thoughts and the ways of the king, right? Someone who understands that Empress Menen is Ivine and that I am her representative, right? And so that our coupling is just that representation of Karamawi Haile Selassie and Empress Menen. And so moving together like that, there can be no failure. Definitely someone who is Africa bound, someone who has prepared for repatriation,
Okay.
yeah, the list goes on and on and on, but I'll stop.
What is the money requirement? How much money this man have to make to be comfortable with a Rasta? Can he work at Home Depot? What are we talking about here?
Well, I just want to say, like how you mentioned the brethren, I just want to say that the sistrins too are going to have to hold themselves accountable. Oftentimes what I see with sistren is that after one relationship is sealed up, then nobody wants to be alone, and you jump into something else instead of taking that time to step back, because after every relationship you are a different you understand. And so ones have to take the opportunity to go within, to ask themselves, okay, because I don't believe in any relationship one person is to blame. You understand? Now, one person might have initiated something, but you allowed it to happen, right? So I think that a lot of that needs to be done. A lot of healing needs to be done, because if not, we become like Erica Badu says and become bag ladies, right? So that time, and I think that that's the time that you should be reaching out to like a Lalabella Institute and saying, you know what, sis, I've just gone through something, you know what I'm saying? I need to be able to heal myself. Can you recommend certain spiritual practices or spiritual baths or whatever, But sistren, I'm not letting us off of the hook either, because if we don't do that self-healing, what we end up doing is attracting the same energy, because this thing is not even about the physical anymore, the same energy over and over again. Oh, I mean, I'm single by choice. So it's not because I am not selectable. I am single by choice. Yes, but I would like to be married again, because I'm interested, every relationship or every individual is different. Some people are looking for simple companionship, right? Or less complicated companionship. Most of the sistren, including myself, are looking for unions, right? So whether that be a legal marriage for some, whether that be a commitment ceremony, I do believe that whatever it is should be acknowledged by immunity. And my final word sound is, let love rule, let love abide. Let's just move throughout iration, with that type of energy, knowing that we're working on ourselves, trying to become members of that new race. And as a result, I believe in the law of attraction as well. And so I will attract like-minded individuals, right? But remember, that's like-minded. So wherever you are, mentally, right, spiritually, that's what you're going to bring. So, just pray, keep their Ivine Majesties, Haile Selassie, Empress Menen Aspa at the forefront of all things. And I truly and I truly believe that as a result of that, we will be able to emulate those beautiful relationships, that we see amongst our brethren and sistren, and first and foremost, be able to emulate the relationship that their Ivine Majesty put before I and I.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
Jano, I'm so hungry, bro. I haven't eaten all day. Like, my head started to hurt me too. Like, what more could I eat right now?
What about a city samosa? So come now and get your samosa, a fusion of Indian, Jamaican and African culture. City samosas, the best samosas in the city.
Well, I Selassie the first of the Almighty, and this is the Dejazmatch Kwasi, and the mission, that's the restoration of the black family. Yeah. Who Jah bless me, say no one curse. Black woman, it's time to merge. Black redemption, we're on the verge. Well, I don't care what you heard. Haile Selassie first, him no second or third. Cause even when their lines are blurred, the eyes stand straight, no bend, no curve. And him give you the love you deserve. Him don't come fi dominate, him come fi serve. Showed us the way home, I live his words. But I can't do it alone, so black woman, let's merge. High tall, sip and herbs, we merge. Massage fi calm her nerves, we merge. Together all demon purge, we merge. Another family emerge, we merge. We spoke and no speech was slurred, we merge. We agreed that Babylon's absurd, we merge. We had pain, now we feel cured, we merge. Hail the king, now she conquered. Well, I don't care what you heard. Haile Selassie first, him no second or third. Cause even when their lines are blurred, the eyes stand straight, no bend, no curve. And him give you the love you deserve. Him don't come fi dominate, him come fi serve. Showed us the way home, I live his words. But I can't do it alone, so black woman, let's merge. We met, something was stirred, we merge. Can't forget things that occurred, we merge. Take plane and start fly like bird, we merge. Friends and family observe, we merge. Them a spend while we conserve, we merge. From our goals we were not deterred, we merge. Till our energy transferred, we merge. Now our memories converge. Well, I don't care what you heard. Haile Selassie first, him no second or third. Cause even when their lines are blurred, the eyes stand straight, no.
What do you have to tell the people about Ras Tafari?
Light to the world. The king of kings and the conquering line of the tribe of Judah. I left himself. Hey yo, yeah, hear them high, hear the black king on the 23rd of July. So tell them guy who praise God up in the sky, it's a lie. The Almighty living on your night. From ancient time them a try. Them Romans know them just open them suit and ties. Criminals ain't got no alibi, they stole my people. Then them come without them genocide.
Are you talking about slavery?
Them couldn't kill. The lion will come conquer Judah tribe. Go through tribulation, I and I strive, see sufferation, I and I still rise. That's why we tell them, in America, live Rastafari in every ghetto area. We come if tell them, in a Toronto, straight at
Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of His chosen Queen, Empress Zero Menen. My name is Kwasi Banso, aka Dejazmatch Kwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man, creative industry attorney. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of Lion Love. Yes, family, you heard right. Lion Love has returned. We are not going to ease up on the topic of Lion Love because without the family, everything else that we're talking about, this Rastafari golden age, Rastafari and STEM, all of them things that mash up if we don't have strong families. So today I have a special guest. We're going to have a reasoning around bringing that family together. Matchmaking in Rastafari, do we need it? Do we need arranged marriages? We're not doing something right. And if we don't reason about it, you know what I mean, then we're not going to improve it. So I'm okay to touch these touchy topics here. Get your ital snacks, get all of your meditation together because today we are going there. We're going to touch all of those uncomfortable topics, of course, from a Rastafari and Pan-African worldview. Before I do that, let me just big up the Lion Pride. Big up the Lion Pride. If you subscribe, you're new here, you're part of the Lion Pride. Just click the subscribe button. You're part of a global family. Big up the Lion Pride on Patreon. We have our town hall meeting coming up June 22nd, our second edition. The first one is now available for all our Patreon members. Can check out the first town hall. We're building a virtual village, and I'm going to find out today because I'm feeling like I want to have some opportunities for single Rastafari and Pan-African people within the Patreon, within the virtual village. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about how we're going to make that work, but that's something that I think that we can add, because if it's a virtual village, you meet your queen in the village, you meet your king in the village. We're reasoning, we're working, we're rising. You know what I mean? Why not add that component where single brethren, positive single sister can come in, and you know, we have some activities for them too. So we're gonna talk about it because this sistering today is part of our Lion Pride on Patreon via the Lalabella Institute. We'll also get a quick update on the Lalabella Institute, what's happening. This is one of the frontline battlefield soldiers. You've seen her on the platform many times. Blue Fire Energy. However, we are now again talking about relationships. So, family, help I to welcome the Royal Rases Jazanai Kush. Welcome.
Give thanks, Rastafari, peace and love.
Yes, blessings to the eye. Welcome. It's always a joy to have the eye on the platform.
Give thanks. It's always a joy to be here with the Lion's Pride.
Yes, and I know that today we're going to touch some spicy topics. So, you know, I know that the eye is well ready. I was looking forward to this. How I want to start, and we're going to talk about, you know, matchmaking for the Rastafari nation. How do we bring together the masculine and the feminine energy to create stable, long-term families, you know, because that has to be the goal. We're not talking about hookup culture, you know what I mean? Sneaky link. This is not the sneaky link show, you know what I mean? This is not the hookup and all these things that are very prevalent in Rastafari family today. You know, we gotta be real. A lot of hooking up going on. We're talking about the matchmaking and stable families. So I want to start by let's talk about the exemplar. His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Selassie I. what lessons can we learn from his union and his meeting, that courtship process with him and Empress Menen?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that in Ethiopia, there are several types of marriages. Okay, so I think that that's important to acknowledge. You have civil marriages, you have traditional, marriages, and then you have your church marriage. So Haile Selassie in his autobiography is very clear to state that the marriage between Waziro Yeshimabet Ali, his mother, and Ras Makonnen was that of a church marriage. So clearly, he viewed that marriage as to be the most sacred of the three. So it's important to make that distinction. So His Majesty's autobiography also mentions his view towards marriage. And in it, he speaks about himself as well as his advisors, thinking that at the age of 19, after being given the governorship of Harar, after having a stable governorship, right, that it was decided that it was now time for him to marry. So he was married previously. And so that marriage resulted in a daughter, but that marriage was not a church marriage. Okay, so that marriage was probably a traditional marriage or a civil marriage. All right, so deciding that he would marry Empress Menen and that this type of marriage would be one that he would put at the level of church was very important. But it was thought out. The fact that he even mentioned it, and not that just in 1911, and I think that's important too for us to commemorate the day, July 31st, 1911. And so not just to say that at the age of 19 I got married, but to say that there were certain steps that were that were
Yes.
already put into,
Yes.
and so I look at their marriage, and he gives us little tidbits. He says things like, even though they might have had issues, that those issues never needed outside interference, that they were able to come together and solve their issues, which shows a positive connection between the two, understanding one another. I think that that's important. Also, the level of loyalty that he talked about the Empress having towards him or for him. For example, uh, she was on her way to a funeral and heard about the boating accident, where several people drowned, right? And His Majesty was a part of that accident, and how she, turned around on that journey to be with him during that time. So, we don't know a lot about their union, but what we do know, we hear from him, and it seems as if it was a very loving union. And oh, there is something else. Let's talk about this really quickly. And we get this from the Empress's grandson or great grandson's autobiography. I think it's called King of Kings, when he talks about the fact that when Haile Selassie was about to ascend the throne, that he was being advised or considering not ascending the throne with Empress Menen, but ascending the throne with a woman who was considered by certain standards as more beautiful. And so during that time, Haile Selassie makes a decision to ascend the throne, as we know, with Empress Menen. So even and that was a tough time. That was a tough situation, because by
Yeah,
that
this is
time,
brand new. This is brand new information for I don't know this part of the
oh,
history. Yes.
I stopped the reading, Ross, just a little bit.
No,
Okay,
but that's the thing about the reading, Ras. It never stop, and I want the
okay,
people to understand this never
okay.
stop. You know what I mean? That's why I love reading.
That's right. Well, I was very surprised when I read that. And but in the end, of course, he ascended the throne with the Empress. So I mean, when you talk about a tough situation, You know what I'm saying? They were able to get through that, and he did the right thing, of course.
Yes.
So
You know what? I want to reason with the eye about this levels of marriage because I meditate the Ethiopian culture. Because remember, His Majesty is a teenager when he's having this early marriage.
right,
My Iris is saying that as soon as you come into puberty, in these ancient societies, because we look at it through our modern lens, you're not going to get the fullness. In those times, a lot of people didn't live past 30, because of disease, because of war, because of just creation. You know what I mean? It was one and two elders, but a lot of people didn't live to make it. So my Iris is that in order to have a productive population, and this is the whole iris of child marriage where it comes in as well. As soon as you become biologically able, they put you together. So particularly the nobility, where they're trying to, bloodline is emphasized, and preserving of bloodlines, and these things have been emphasized, making sure that if you're of royal blood, you have a youth born as fast as possible, before something happens and you're taken out. Why I say this is that it creates a kind of culture of baby mama culture, because these women now who are part of the divorces, and they don't have the king man there. These children are all taken care of because they're nobility. But how does the I cite that whole system? And of course, His Majesty and Empress Benin changed radically that system, and basically abolished it. But what do you think about that system?
about the system as it is being mirrored in contemporary society or back then?
Well, maybe you touch something. Maybe we talk about both. And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm asking because I know you're a champion academic. So and these are just thoughts I have. I want to, I think this is the forum when we talk about relationships, you know what I mean? And just how was our ancient society relating. What do
Right.
you think about the ancient context, and then talk to us about the mirror of today?
Well, I side, and also I'm an educator. So I
Yes.
have an opportunity to have been around children as they, go through many stages, adolescence being one of them. And I side with Empress Menon. I think that the child marriages, I understand cultural relativity. You understand, but at the same time, I know biologically that an 11-year-old girl, is not ready to bear children. Even though she might have a menstrual cycle, her body is still not developed enough to do that. And I think it was because of the trauma of that, right? That Empress Menen outlawed it. In fact, Princess Sahai, her daughter, in an interview that was done in Jerusalem, spoke about that. Um, I believe the interviewer said something to her about, family life. And she said to her, well, or marriage. And she says, well, mother is against that. As you can see, I'm 18 and I'm still not married, And so because of that, I know that that is the thought process of the emperor and the empress. And so because of that, I side with them. And just, like I said, just looking at biology, I don't think, and I mean, and then if you think about maturity, right? Mental maturity, we're not even talking about physical maturity. And science says that, males might mature a little less than women, right? In certain areas. So neither side is ready. You know what I'm saying? If you pair an 11-year-old girl with a 11 or 12, well, at that time the male probably would have been older anyway, but
Yes.
still, I'm not for that. Now I thought that maybe because I'm always trying to predict the mind of the reading rods. So I thought that I thought that when you mentioned that that you were saying gonna go towards some of these young child brides in Rastafari. You know what
Mm.
I'm saying? Because there at one point was a trend, maybe it has tapered off some now, where a lot of younger women were being brought into the liberty by older men. And I don't mean 5 years older. I'm talking about 20 years and things
Mhm.
of that such. And so I don't think that's a wise thing either, because when you have such huge age gaps, it's inevitable that one has already been there, done that, and you just don't grow together the way that you could if you're age mates, and so I think that has caused a great rift in some communities too, because by the time the woman is ready to experience things in life, right? The man has already done that and he's just not interested.
Mm. That leads us into the next segment, which is what is the current state of the community from your vantage point in terms of relationships? Because you talk about older brethren dealing with younger sistren,
Hmm.
um, and the onboarding of sistren into the movement, I think, is something that we have to talk about in terms of how do we bring forward culture sistren, because usually it's the brethren that are culturing the sistren. um, you do have sistren that come to the liberty independently. Big up them sistren there who find the light, but majority, I would say, our sistren are introduced through a brethren,
Hmm.
to the liberty. So what does the I see in all of your long time trodding, and that the I has been trodding now for many many decades? So
Yeah, almost four, so 40
almost,
years.
yeah, almost 40 years in the
Yeah.
liberty. What have you seen, or what are you seeing in terms of single Rastafari on the battlefield?
Okay, well, first I want to say that this issue that we're discussing isn't a new one. I wrote this book, Roaring Lionesses, in 2011. So in it, I interview um, 28 Rastafari women. So as I was preparing for this, I thought about one of the word sounds of one of the sisters. So I'll just read it really quickly. She says, I know a lot of sistren right now out there, including I, who don't have a king. Maybe it's the trod. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure. I just feel like we are not being approached by the kings. It seems like they prefer the bald head woman. I know all of them are not like that. I hear some Rastaman say that they love to see their women in long skirts and head wraps. I personally feel that there needs to be a revision in the faith that allows for a protocol for how a Rastafari man could approach or show interest in a Rasta woman. Because if you look at other cultures, there are protocols for relationship building. I don't think I and I have developed things to that level. There should be certain social gatherings. A lot of times when I and I meet each other, it's at a groundation or ISIS. And like a Rosh Shoai, this is not the appropriate place for them to approach a daughter. Even for teenage youths, like the I say, the I have a 19-year-old daughter, where do they meet other ones within that age liberty? We don't have schools where they can intermingle with each other. And I can say that this little Rasta princess is of an age where she has these feelings, and her companion can be a Rasta prince. Instead, they attend schools where they mix up with someone, and the one that will approach her will be a little bald head boy. Like a sister and I were reasoning that I and I would like to have a gathering for single Rastafari brethren and sistren to make a connection. I need I and I need to be united with I and I own, because it seems like the relationship between the Rasta man and woman is drifting. Now that's 2011.
Wow.
Okay. So, this is well overdue. You know, and I have an opportunity because I host annual Rastafari Woman I Treats, right? To reason with sistren because, you know, I write books, you know, because I've coined the term blue fire, which identifies the divine feminine in Rastafari. I have an opportunity to hear the sounds of a lot of sistren. And a lot of sistrans really feel as if the compatibility between them and the Rastafari man is is an issue. The compatibility level or lack of compatibility. And so we probably need to think about some of those things. You know, women at various ages have criteria that they're looking for, and a lot of sistren just feel as if, you know, Rastafari brethren are not as open to communicating about some of these issues without there being some type of drama attached to it, without brethren feeling like they're trying to berate them, right, or make them feel less than, you know. So there's kind of like a tug of war that I'm sensing right now. And so when I hear sistrans like the one in the book talk about what she's talking about, I'm like, okay, we really do need a protocol. We need to hear what it is that each other expects. We need to hear what the lines of demarcation will be. There just needs to be, you know, a real merging of what I would call the red fire and the blue fire.
Definitely. And it begins with alignment of purpose and vision,
Hmm.
and ensuring that, you know, there are things that we can do to prioritize, because we have to be intentional. I say that we are building the architecture right now, our generation, of this golden age of Rastafari and Pan African that's approaching, and relationship has to be part of it. This is why, you know, I think I'm going to be opening the Lion Pride on Patreon, because we have like-minded people. I'm going to be encouraging single people to join, because I would like to do some virtual events,
Hmm.
different things that we can do, because no one else is interested right now. I would take it on, um, but we have to start. And you know, a lot of brethren, I'm going to give the brethren side because you gave the sister side. You know, a
Hmm.
lot of brethren, one of the things that you find out as a ras when you start ita levity as a brethren, you know, you're treading up from a ballad. You know, I can say this from, you know, I used to dress kind of a GQ style when I was a ballad, you know, when I came to school, when I was in my gallus
I could see that. I could see that. I could see that.
age. You know what I mean? I went, you know, from dance hall style in high school to college. You know, I said, let me come with a GQ style. And then what I didn't realize is when I start to rust now, because I always thought that GQ was getting all of the ladies, the apex. But what I found out now is that when I put on the covenant and start rust, at that time the daughter them start to attract. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
When you start to embody His Imperial Majesty and you start live that liberty, it's like a magnet. And what happens to, I think, a lot of brethren, if you're not developing that discipline, you know what I mean, you can get caught up in the same type of, you know, dealing with a lot of sistering and not having a focus, you know, having a central focus. So I think that's part of it. Um, a deeper part, though, is the economic aspect of being able to maintain a family, maintain a long-term relationship, having a sister costs, you know what I mean? Because you can't just have good times, you know, you can't, love alone is not gonna do it, you know what I mean? And what happens with a lot of brethren, I just was reasoning with a good brethren of mine who's a promoter in the music industry, and he was saying, you know how many brethren right now are living off of their women, who are artists, who, they stay with a woman, sometimes it's a couple months, sometimes it's a couple years, until the woman, they're not bringing in consistent income. They're really depending on this sister who probably started as a fan to, you know, and then while they're there, a baby's born, then they move on, rinse, wash, and repeat. You know what I mean? So sometimes when you see all these artists and they have a lot of children, it's because of this. But multiply that across Rastafari brethren, because a lot of us are hustling. You know what I mean? And the income is up and down. You know what I mean? So when your income is up and down, it's very difficult to maintain a long-term relationship. The expectations that come with it, no matter how ital the sister is, are irie in the beginning. In the end of the day, she going to want to live somewhere. You know what I mean? She going to want to eat some food. You know what I mean? These are the practical, and because the brethren can't, the relationship will start, money get funny, things get rocky, and probably that split. But there's a youth now that has been born, you know what I mean, out of that. So the economics is one thing, the lack of the discipline is another thing for the brethren. The other part of it now is the alignment of the purpose. A lot of brethren are not living into their purpose. And if you're not living into your purpose, you're not going to know the helpmate that you would require to achieve that purpose. So this is why I say purpose over pum pum is my favorite motto for the young brethren, because until you know your purpose, you're not even going to know the type of woman and what you're vetting for. You know what I mean? So you could have two people who are Irish people, but they have a different purpose. So there's a clash. Now, when the brethren start manifest, the sister want to do something completely different, and then there's a tear. So those, I think, are three, from a brethren perspective, why we're not seeing more long-term relationships. How that sound to the eye?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head with those because, especially from a woman's perspective, I hear the economics a lot too. I hear, Rastafari brethren at one point, were dealing with certain things. You know what I'm saying? When it came to economics,
Her
and
money a flow. Her money a flow like
yeah,
rain. Yes.
right. And during that time there, things was okay. You know what I'm saying? But then as that began to dry up, and more sistrins entered the workforce, you know, the brethren, it seemed like a lot of them didn't find alternative careers. You know what I'm saying? So now you have somebody who used to be a big gun, big money gun, right? Now he's just sitting around the house and being a live at home dad, and the cistern is out there. And so when you have a change in dynamics like that, you're going to have a change in the relationship. And I hear so many sistren talk about the fact that, they're out there hustling and hustling hard. And now they're beginning to actually feel masculine, right? So you hear brethren want to talk about, they want, women to embody their femininity. Well, if she's going out there and she's the main hustler, right? Even if you might be helping out with making food and taking the kids to school, deep down inside, she feels hard, because when she goes out there, mind you, she's not just going out there to a job. She's going out there into a system, the same system that many brethren avoid because they burn it out and they feel like it is so counter who they are. Well, what about the conscious Rasta woman? You know what I'm saying? This same system is oppressive to her too. And so you have all of those things, then you also have children now who are part of this situation, and she has to try to counter it because they're not going to a Rasta school, most of them. So now she's having to counter what Babylon is inputting in her fruit. So it's a lot of tension. And so going back to His Majesty, when he talks about clearly these things had to be lined up before he sought a wife. I think that we do need to really and truly sit down and talk about economics, talk about lifestyle, exactly how is it that the couple wants to live. You know what I'm saying? If the sister, wants a 5 bedroom, 3 bath house, and the brethren is cool, with a shanty, it's not gonna work. You understand? And I mean, really and truly, you have, and then unfortunately, one begins to make the other feel a way about his or her desires, and all of those things contribute to, the frustration that's happening within the Rastafari liberty. Another thing, too, is timing. I mentioned on someone else's show, I don't know if it was one of DI's interviews, but talked about this idea of a dating protocol, just like the sister in the book mentioned. And so I talked about it, and it's termed Ye Selassie Sib Saba. Okay, and so Ye Selassie Sib Saba in Amharic translates pretty much into a trinity of meetings, right? And so along each of these meetings or these purposeful connections, there should be things that are discussed, so that outline should already be there. We're going to talk about economics. We're going to talk about child rearing. We're going to talk about repatriation. We're going to talk about whether one works outside of the household and what does that look like, right? And we're going to talk about, do we want to be married legally or do we want to have a commitment ceremony? We want to talk about our living, is one a fruitarian and the other one, is a raw foodist. I mean, what does all of this look like, right? And so I think that, couples, potential couples, right, should take the time to really and truly identify these three particular meetings. Think about it as a Solomon and Sheba kind of vibration. Sheba or Makeda is coming to prove him with hard questions. Well, look at the Ye Selassie Sib Saba as a time of the both of you proving each other with hard questions.
So, what structure would house this? Would we need a separate organization, or would it be done through the houses and the mansions? How does the I envision this to be implemented?
Well, Lalabella Institute is definitely primed for this type of creativity, right? Creating of this type of juncture where Rastafari brethren and sistren come together. So, but it also could be done in individual houses, but there has to be a model, right? And so the Ye Selassie Sib Saba is an opportunity for ones, and I actually have an outline for it.
Yeah, okay.
Ones can tweak it and decide, I think I would rather use this, but it's actually, I have a pamphlet that I've written on this whole process and what it looks like. And so I think that the sooner we engage in this process, the better. The whole umbrella that everything is up under is Haile Selassie's talking about a new race, right?
Um,
Because what does this new race look like? And
yeah.
I think definitely that it is the new Rastafari man and woman, not new in the terms of just falling away, right? Or pulling away from the tradition, but the Rastafari man and woman that overstand at the mind is genderless. Okay. So, a lot of the gender constraints that we placed on each other, we really need to go back and we really need to analyze how much of those gender norms are African centered, how many of them are Eurocentric, tainted. And so and then on top of that, as Rastafari, what is specific to our liberty? So we take a little bit, right, from our ancient culture, and then we infuse it with our African New World experience.
Serious. What I'm seeing the vision now is what we will do with the Lion Pride on Patreon is that we'll get a discount from Lalabella. We'll partner with Lalabella Institute. So once two people meet in the Lion Pride on Patreon and they want to take it to the next level, they would then go to Lalabella Institute. They would get a discount for being Lion Pride on Patreon members, and you would take them through the process.
Yes.
That's how I'm seeing it, because it's a lot of work. I don't have time. I have to be honest with myself. My wife would not love I try to take on the matchmaking. But if I have something already, we're going to make it happen, because everything that we're talking about, we got to figure out implementation. That's where my irids are. You know what I mean? How we can work together, collective security. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the eye has obviously taken the time, and I want the eye to also just explain, because some people is going to be the first time they ever seen the eye. Explain what Lalabella Institute is.
Okay. Lalabella Institute is a brick and mortar building here in Miami. It started off online, so we still have some online courses. And the whole purpose of it is to educate the man, woman, and child within the Rastafari Livity according to African centered pedagogy if we're dealing with the youths, or andragogy if we're dealing with adults, right? So, andragogy is the study of teaching adults, and pedagogy is the study of teaching youths. But everything is from an African centered perspective. So, a lot of the courses that are offered are tailored to Rastafari. So, for example, I have a course that deals with the distinction between sexuality and femininity for Rastafari girls ages 13 to 18. Because we know that this is a time when, young girls are going through identity formation. And so we don't want them to look at what Babylon says is beautiful or attractive, right? And not know what this looks like in African culture for young girls at this age, right? And then again, what Rastafari thinks is, virtuous. So I have courses like that. I have courses that deal with critical thinking, because regardless of what age you're at, right, you must be able to think critically. And so a course like that might infuse the speeches of Haile Selassie the First, and very much like it's done with study group, right? These students will learn critical thinking skills and then apply them to those speeches. I also have a course called the Haile Selassie Empress Men in Balance, and that is a course specifically on relationship building, right? And how you balance your relationship. Every relationship is different, right? And what is considered balance for one couple might not be balanced for the other. So, Lalabella Institute is a place where I also hold celebrations or celebrations for His Majesty's Earthlight, for Her Majesty's Earthlight. But one of our signature events, again, is based on relationships, and it's called the Marriage Supper, right? And that's SUPPA, right? Supper. And that deals with the 1911 marriage of Haile Selassie and Empress Menen. And so we invite community members to this event, and it is a royal banquet for Rastafari man and woman. So we know we don't celebrate Valentine's Day, but Rastafari woman is woman same way, and she wants to be treated royal and honored and loved. And so this is an opportunity for a brethren to say, look, Lalabella Institute has a very quaint Africantic, we burn Rome, Africantic setting. 20 couples, full 3-course item meal. And I'm taking the eye out tonight. Put on your red, gold, and green, and let's go.
Nice,
And so,
nice.
we offer all of these things because we know that a lot of these elements have been left out of our relationships. Because I remember, and I'll get a little personal,
Yes.
being married and not feeling like, I'm not taken out enough. You know what I'm saying? I want to get dressed up. Can we get a sitter for the youths? Because at that time, I was raising 6 children. And I mean,
Mm.
everybody needs a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're raising
Feel it.
6 kids, you know. But because at the time I was married to someone who was significantly older, he didn't feel like that was important. You know what I'm saying? So
Battlefield. He was saying battlefield. We're there on the battlefield.
yeah,
Let's
definitely.
do
And
it. Yeah.
I too was a part of that same thought process.
Yes.
And what happened, what ended up happening was I became very, very hard because of
Okay.
that. So my femininity and my natural femininity suffered as a result of that type of mentality because I felt like in order to be considered a real soldier, right? I had to kind of quell that side of myself in order to measure up to what it meant to be a Rastafari woman. Now I realize that that was detrimental, right? And I'm very lucky that I was able to self rescue, honestly, you know. And so regardless of all of that, I'm not bitter and I still love. So here's another plug for another book of mine, which is called, and this is a love story, Rastafari love story, and it's called Between the Fire and Ice. So, you know, I say all of that to say that I know you asked about Lalabella Institute. So my work and my life, right, reflect each other. And so this is just an opportunity for I and I to grow together as family, you know, as family.
No, it's much needed. And as I say, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? This is what I'm asking the global family. So these efforts have to be supported, and we're gonna do what we can with the Lion Pride on Patreon. You know, creating a virtual village where people can meet each other. You can watch somebody how they interact, how they introduce themselves. You know, you can take time, see them in action, and then if you like somebody, you can make it known. You know what I mean? And then we'll funnel you to Lalabella, where the two of you will pay money because you're gonna support Lalabella Institute. You're not gonna waste Russ's just a night time, and you're gonna pay for the counseling and all of these things. Um, Hard question now.
Mhm.
People are gonna say, is Rasses in a relationship? Well, how can she counsel us about XYZ if she is single? What? How would you respond to that?
Oh, I mean, I'm single by choice. So
Okay.
it's not because I am not selectable. I am I am single by choice.
Okay.
Yes, but I would like to be married again because I'm interested, you know, every relationship or every individual is different. Some people are looking for simple companionship, right? Or less complicated companionship. Most of the sistren, including myself, are looking for unions, right? So whether that be legal marriage for some, whether that be a commitment ceremony, I do believe that whatever it is should be acknowledged by immunity, right? You know, back in the day, there were a lot of hookups that resulted in families, right? Some long lasting families, but I don't think enough ceremony, right,
It's
was put
important.
into these unions. I don't think, and I think when you have ceremony, there's a level of accountability that comes with it because, you know, the whole community came out and that now they are vested in your success, right? And so I think because of my marriage and the experiences that I've gone through, and being in the liberty and speaking to women, just, you know, hundreds of Rastafari women, I think that does qualify me, right, to be a guide in that space, right? And I think that there's so many Rastafari women that I speak to, like I said, of all different age levels, that feel as if they do need counsel, right? And that they would love to have their potential kingman be a part of this type of council. I don't think we should go into it blindly. I don't think we should say, well, I know how to handle my business. Yeah, you do know how to handle your business ultimately, right? But sometimes you just need, His Majesty said that they didn't need interference, right? But that was once they were together. We're
Yeah.
talking about putting couples together, right? And what that looks like so that you don't end in a divorce, especially if you have children. That can be heartbreaking. That can be it can have a lasting impact. And so we don't want that. We want to continue to build the Rastafari family.
Serious. What traditional practices do you think could be implemented that we could adopt as Rastafari? I'm thinking about things like arranged marriages. There's a show on Netflix that shows, I can't remember the name, with wealthy East Indian families, and they
Oh,
have
I
a,
saw that.
yeah, you saw that, right? It went
Yeah.
viral. But they have a whole system, like they modernize the arranged marriage, so it's not just pick this person. They have like a whole process where they bring different people, you reason with the person. If there's a link, you go to the next stage, and you know what I mean. So both the male and the female have a little bit more say, but the
Yeah.
parents of both sides are still very involved. You know what I mean? The families are still very involved. And to be honest, I kind of like that kind of vibe. You know what I mean? What traditional practices do you think I need to implement in Rastafari to ensure more long-term families?
Well, since we're adults, right, and many of us don't have Rastafari parentage, I would say inspired marriage, so it might not be arranged by elders, but it can definitely be inspired, by our brethren and sisters who know us well, right? I know some people might not like the idea of, having someone kind of put them together with someone. But I definitely think that that is the way to go because I even asked my sistrins, like, okay, what do you think? Analyze my personality and what what type of brethren do you think would be a better fit for I? And I mean, I've had sisters straight up tell me, well, you need a Solomon. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, no, you're philosophical, you're deep thinking, and you should be paired with that type of individual. And so sure enough, I'm beginning to agree with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that might work better for me even from I think we could also look at astrology. Now, some people laugh it off and they're like, oh, astrology is a bunch of whatever. But I'm going to tell you, I've looked at the astrological pairing of Haile Selassie and Empress Menen, and that is one of my works too, right? I call it the union of the lion and the ram because he's a Leo and she's an Aries. But I'm going to tell you, there's something to be said for looking at it from the stars. You know what I'm saying? So those inspired marriages, looking at astrology, even going to a person who could read energy might also be useful. You know what I'm saying? You do have individuals. I am a priestess, I am a prophetess within Rastafari. You might have an individual just kind of observe the two of you. You know what I'm saying? And you can take it from those levels too. Because I believe that all of those things were considered. I don't think that Haile Selassie and Empress Menen, they say Lijatsu, right, was the one who kind of sat back and watched it and say, hey, you all might be a good fit. So these are traditional things.
And that's why I bring it up, because I think most, if not all, traditional societies have some form of arranged marriage, because, and let's talk about it. The purpose of marriage. I think we've also gotten into the romantic conception of marriage, which is one of the reasons that marriage fails in the West, because people are looking for a fairy tale. If you don't get butterflies and all these things, then you get bored, and you're looking for happiness and this and that, and you leave your person behind. So that was never the purpose of marriage, in the history of creation.
Right.
Marriage has always been about the preservation of wealth, of family connection, a way to bind the nation, the tribe, the clan, whatever, the lineament of family together. But marriage is one of the principal institutions that cuts across every culture. I think almost every culture has some form of marriage,
Right.
even hunter-gatherer. A lot of those societies have some kind of marriage. So it's very important. How do you see the institution itself of marriage?
Well, I too think that it is extremely important, but I think that the whole idea of mission and purpose is, like you alluded to earlier, is important too. I remember talking to Bongo Shefan, right, in Jamaica in 2010, because I was concerned that the roles of the priestess and the prophetess were not a part of Rastafari, just clearly identified like the priest and the prophet was. And so my question was, do these roles exist? I know that they don't formally, but informally. And so he said to me, well, I want to say something. A priestess must be equally yoked with a priest, right? And a prophetess must be equally yoked with a prophet. So that's answering your question, in that purpose and mission, right, need to be greatly considered, because if not, and I've seen it many a times, I've seen jealousy creep in. I've seen envy creep in, right? When one person seems to be rising because he or she knows their mission and the other person doesn't. I know someone who is very close to me and is about 65. And she reasoned to me the other day and she said, I don't know my mission in life.
Wow.
65. And I thought about that and I said, wow, and so it's important that we explore these things independently before we consider becoming one with another person.
Critical.
Yeah, it is. And so
Yeah.
I think that the purpose of marriage, of course, I think there should be attraction there, physical attraction. But I'm a sapiosexual, right? And so for those who might not be familiar with that term, right, it means is that I'm attracted to the mind first. Like if I don't have that connection with you
High
mentally,
level lyrics. You need high level lyrics.
high level, high level. Why did I walk into that? But yeah, you definitely do, But then the good thing about it is that I have the power of discernment. So once the lyrics come in, I can tell if they're BS, right? So go on and spit your lyrics and I'll tease them out later. Oh boy. But yeah, so that needs to happen.
Yes.
And I think that if you're at the stage of child rearing, right, you need to really think about that. So I think that that's one of the main purposes, right? But let's talk about the ones who are older, right, who are past the child rearing stages, because remember, depending on your age, marriage has a different purpose. So for ones who I would say are 50 and over, right, marriage becomes very much about partnership, and companionship, you know what I'm saying? So all of the other things, and having solid economics, because you don't have 20 years to build that idle shop together, right? So if you're meeting or marrying someone in your 50s, hopefully the man has done what he needed to do, right, for all of those years, and the same thing for the woman. So yeah, I think depending on where you are, marriage has a different purpose.
Are there a lot of single Rastafari women over 50 that you've encountered?
Oh yeah. I think we're probably the largest demographic. Because we married, many of us, and just like the Empress, this is not our first marriage. You know what I'm saying? Empress Menon, and let's remember she was married 4 times, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's no shame in that. If it just doesn't work, it doesn't work. I do not believe in people suffering. A lot of times people say, they stay for the family. And I understand that, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, to thine own self be true. And so, yeah, that 50 and over. And I can tell you one of the biggest concerns is that the brethren who are that age and over are not financially stable, or solid.
Yes.
They just aren't. And now you have sisters who are coming, they've worked for the last 20 years or 30 years, and they might be ready to repatriate to the continent. And then the brethren can't really contribute because now we're talking about retirement years. We're talking about people, in the case of the women, who've worked for 20 and 30 years and now want to go home and maybe live off of a pension or whatever that they earn, and then the brethren doesn't have anything much to contribute, and that's like, it's sad.
So what about the loving? Him can't just give you some loving a night time.
No, sir.
So you hear that, brethren, the loving is not enough. Brethren, the loving is not enough. Boy, it's rough out there. It's rough right now. But we have to reason about these things. And this is why, creating an ecosystem for yourself, getting up on the technology, finding your purpose, creating that niche, creating the economic opportunities. It's never been as much opportunity right now. There's never been as many tools right now. Yes, the herb hustling is no longer viable for 99% of I&I. So we have to pivot, and this is why STEM, investing in yourself, get some certifications, you know what I mean? AI is here. You can build a business with AI right now, to run automated if you are willing to learn. And this is why reading and that thirst for knowledge that Rastafari exemplify, from Lich Tafari days, coming straight up. We have to exemplify. This is why we push this mantra, purpose over pum pum, because you can easily attract the women, but keeping them, or keeping one, I should say, has proven very difficult for many brethren, and a lot of brethren are also hurt. A lot of brethren have been hurt, losing the woman that they love, because one of the worst things as a brethren is to lose the respect of a woman that you love. And that happens when you're cohabitating with a woman and you're not the breadwinner. Worse if it's her house and you're in her house and your money dry up, and you slowly see that respect, that glimmer, butterfly them fly off from our belly, and there's no more butterfly. You find out that you're in the Sahara desert, everything dry up, there's no loving again. These things will happen to you, and then what happens to the brethren? To preserve his heart, he's gonna go out on the road and find another sister, and then now he gets that attention, that accolade, that masculine. He can feel masculine for that time. But again, the victim in all of this is that there are children being born in all of these homes,
right?
And these children are growing up without the benefit of a mother and a father, and then a lot of times things creeping. And how can I say this? Because we're seeing a very low retention rate of children who are born in Rastafari families. We're not seeing these youths on the harps at the Nyabingi. You know what I mean? We're seeing these youths as soon as they get out the house, they're gone. You know, I know enough of them will come forward. I know once we get our act together, the prodigal son, that whole proverb, you know what I mean, is a prophecy. However, I don't want them to have to go out there, you know what I mean? We want to be able to employ our youths to, you know, teach our youth, educate our youth. So, and this is why I burn out the Gallus vibration. Now, another hard question. How do you feel about brethren wanting multiple wives? Because we have a numbers issue. There's a shortage. Even if every brethren, one for one, took a sister, I can't remember. I think there's literally millions more black women than there are black brethren. African societies, you know, polygamy was a thing. In the modern context, I've never seen it work in the West. I've seen many try. And I mean, how does the eyesight these things? Do you think these are things that will have to be implemented within Rastafari as well?
Well, I don't think that polygamy in itself is a negative thing. I think, again, the idea of cultural relativity must always be at the forefront. And so within Rastafari, though, I have never seen it work successfully. Again, in Roaring Lionesses, in my first book, I interview a sister who talks about how miserable, she was, how she felt put down by the whole process until finally the brethren just had to tell the other sister, this is not working. She can't handle it. So I don't think that, I think right now a lot of it is about ego, because you just spoke about economics. And if it's hard for a brethren to deal with and take care of one woman, many of them, most of them won't be able to do it with two. But I do think that Haile Selassie, again, is the example, right? And the fact that he had one woman at one empress, I think that that is where we should be going. But I don't think that as a nation that we should frown on brethren and sisters who do engage in polygamy. If it works, you never know what goes on behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? What type of ideologies they formed as a family, what type of rationales they have for these types of unions. So I think to just, make a blanket statement and say, no, I just bun that out, I think would be very critical. Personally, though, I would not be interested in polygamy. If I were to be interested in polygamy, I probably would have already, in my mindset, just seen this as strictly companionship. I wouldn't be really interested in the brethren like that, but he would be probably more like a friend in my heavens. Because in that way, I wouldn't be jealous. You understand? So I've kind of, I've stripped it down to you're just really like a good brethren. And I might be, in my priestess mode where I'm working on creating, this healing center. So I'm mission focused. So I really don't even, I'm not in that, lovey-dovey stage anyway at that point. I'm there for my mission and may have a brethren, and yes, go ahead and have your wives, because I'm not even looking at you like that.
Because what I always say to the brethren, because I know a lot of brethren who desire that setup, is that is a wealthy man's arena. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's only for brethren who have resources that can manage that. And then the other part of it is the queen. The first queen is supposed to be a part of selection of the wives. It's not that you just bring home a next sister. Because if you look at even one of my episodes of Lion Love, one of the sisters gave a testimony that is one of the things that caused a rift with her and her child's father. He was trying to bring in a sister into the relationship, and she didn't really have a say until after the relationship had started. So there's a protocol to how it's done, and I think it's a wealthy man. But the reason I say that is because if everything goes well and we have more sistren than brethren, what do we do with those extra sistren who desire to be in a relationship? How do we do we tell them you didn't make the cut, sorry? You know what I mean? So I think we always have to be open-minded.
Now, here's another thing too. And this isn't necessarily going to solve the dearth issue, right? But it could, as I reason to more sistren who are frustrated with the lack of planning that brethren have done, right? And as a result, in their latter years, they're still struggling, right? I hear more sistren considering like a flip, like what the brethren did. A lot of brethren brought in, like the sistren said, these bald head ayatas. And so I'm hearing sistren now saying, well, because see, one thing about Rastafari women, we're found attractive just like Rastafari men are by all types of brethren, right? Not only locks brethren, but brethren without locks, and there's a different level of consciousness, I think, amongst people now without locks. More people are eating idol, more people are citing the continent, right, who are not Rastafari. So sistren are now asking themselves, and we talk about this, well, are we open to dating brethren who are not Rastafari and bringing them into the fold, or having them overstand our liberty? And in Roaring Lionesses, a sistren does just that. And at that point, I was like floored. I was like, really? You brought your king man into the liberty? You know what I'm saying? So that's also another option. So, well, you might think polygamy is one, but sistren are saying, well, you know what? We can go outside.
That is,
and that's something real critical, because if sistren start doing that, that's going to be a problem.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. I think it's going to be a problem, not as in bringing brethren to Rastafari, but for the existing brethren, because remember, for a long time, Rastafari sistren would not traverse that terrain. Brethren were doing it, and we would sit back and, shake our heads, and why is he bringing this bald head woman? But for the longest time, we would stick to our guns, saying that we wanted Rastafari brethren already, groomed, and we didn't want the other thing. But if sistren start looking at these other brethren who are looking at them and are really respecting them, yeah.
Very interesting. There's a lot that has to be considered, but one thing is for sure, we have to have these reasonings. And again, I want to just seal up with some solutions in terms of moving forward. One solution I'm saying is that I'm opening the Lion Pride on Patreon. If you're interested and you're watching and you are single and you want to have a place, a safe space where you can meet other like-minded Rastafari and Pan-African people, we are going to, open the space for that type of interaction. And again, we'll partner with Lalabella Institute, so that if ones are there and you meet someone there and there's some attraction, there's a process that you can go through to see if there's, if it's worth exploring on a higher level. And our theme is nation building. Our theme is preparing for the golden age. And one of the things I say, as a brethren, now is the time where you want to help me, where you want a queen, because it's Armageddon. You can't really be loosey goosey out there just sleeping around with various, ones, and who are wounded with their traumas, and just out there. It's a mess out there right now. So faster you can find your purpose and find a queen that will help you to achieve it, that's going to help you to build that wealth and to get to where you're going. Your queen is going to be the one to believe in the eye and to help the eye to take it to the next level.
And Dejazmatch, I also want to say, like the eye said, the type of queen, right? The type of sistren that you are looking for as a king man is really, really important. And what I want the Rastafari brethren who are watching the show to realize is that, there are always certain types of bubbling ups, so to speak, right? At different points in the liberty. Well, what's happening right now, and I'm giving them an inside scoop, right? What's happening right now within the Rastafari woman is that her spirituality, right, is on an all-time high. Like, that's why it's important to acknowledge the roles of the priestess and the prophetess, right? Simply because that is what I'm seeing. That is what, and I remember, I've been in the liberty 40 years. That's a significant amount of time, right? You're seeing a shift in the sistren rising up, recognizing who they are. Blue fire is a part of that, right? So getting a woman now who knows herself and knows herself on a deep spiritual level, where she is healer, where she is lover, where she is possessing her goddess self and knowing her goddess self, you understand, where she is wise mind, you understand, where she understands Sophia principles, where she understands the Shekinah energy. We're talking deep, deep, deep metaphysical things right now. So obtaining, the love of a woman like this right now is the key. It is. I'm telling you, no man right now within the Rastafari liberty who is single is going to rise to his higher heights, right? Single. It just isn't happening. This is not the season for that. That might have happened in the 70s, where you could get all of your fortification from your brethren, and that, helped you. Right now, in this point, that's because throughout the world, right, there's a shifting of energies. And the Rastafari woman is not absent in that shift. She is very, very present. I'm talking about very deep iritical ayatas, and many of them single. Why? Because when you come into yourself, when you know yourself on this very high level, you do become selective. You become selective because you know that any interference, right, added to your rising, right, is going to set you back. Sisters are not really allowing for that. The prophecy says that he who knows the right and does the wrong shall be spanked with many stripes. Don't think because we're talking about the level of rising up and these metaphysical things, that we're new age. No, we know the prophecy too. And he who knows the right and does the wrong shall be spanked with many stripes. And that applies to the woman too. So as you're rising and as you're becoming, your higher self, like His Majesty commanded, you're not going to allow anyone to sidetrack you. And so the sistrens are being called picky. They're being, brethren are feeling like, sistrens think they're better. No, it's not that. But what is happening is that sistrens are requiring brethren to level up. So as you talked about the Lion's Voice Network and Lalabella Institute partnering, to help build the Rastafari Nation, I would say only serious brethren apply. And that's the same thing for sistrins too, because we don't want you to come and bring our brethren down. So I think that that's the purpose of having the platforms where one's kind of engage, and I kind of envision it as on Lalabella Institute side, having sistrins like in a panel, right? On a panel, just introducing themselves, talking about their life works, and having brethren just kind of observe, right? And those brethren who are interested in a sistren to kind of submit a bio. And I know brethren are like, just not like, what are you talking about? A bio? That seems really,
That one I go rough. That'll go rough. That'll go rough. But
well,
continue.
you know what? You know what? Right now, even if you don't want to type, AI is your friend. And not only that, but maybe you could send in a little video clip. You know what I'm saying? Because we have to
Video
see.
might work. Video might work.
Yeah,
But
video is fine.
the
Video is fine.
yeah.
Say who you are, say who, talk about what community you're a part of, because we're going to do some vetting too. You better throw out some names and say, Dejazmatch Kwasi.
Mm-hmm.
so
I have a hard question again.
Okay.
Because, I know I can handle these questions. Prophetess, priestess, from a brethren perspective, they're saying, am I going to have any intimate time with this prophet and priestess, or is she praying every night? I can't get a touch. I can't get no do. You know what I mean? How does that part work with this uprising? Because that's a concern for most brethren who are healthy, vital, functioning.
Well, remember, you should have a prophet if you're a prophetess. So if you're evenly yoked like that, then you already know the answer to that, right? And going back to a biblical stance, the prophet Isaiah, right, or Isaiah was married to a prophetess, okay, and they had children, right? So yes, but at the same time, I think that if you really overstand a one's mission and work, you'll be coupled properly, and you'll know right away by the time you reason with a person. If I think too, though, and this is something that I'll go over in the course, right, that we do with the couples who are interested. We'll talk about the Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath is deep from the perspective of the Kabbalah. And so we'll talk about what happens during the Sabbath, right? That's the time really of intimacy during the Sabbath. And ones might not look at it like that because we haven't been taught of the Sabbath like that. But yeah, there's definitely times for that. But it's sacred energy that is being, transferred at that time. So it's nothing that is low frequency. So now remember, everything we're talking about right now is high level vibration.
It's high level, but I'm just giving the man part of it, because I'm a realist, you know what I mean? And I know my brethren out there, and these are the things that get us in trouble, because reason with a Rastafari sistren too, probably that topic not gonna come up, you know what I mean? Because you're reasoning on a righteous level, you're reasoning about the majesty, you're reasoning about history, you're reasoning about repatriation, you're reasoning about, so, and as you said, high vibration, so ones might even say, boy, I don't even want to bring this, because erroneously they would look at intimacy as representing low vibration. However, they get in a relationship, and maybe this sistren idea of great intimacy is once a month, and the brethren, that don't work for the brethren, you know what I mean? So these are things that have to be a part of the process,
of course,
because reasoning about the desire that people have different levels of desire for physical touch, for physical intimacy, and that is also a big issue in many relationships, because a brethren can feel deprived I'm an adult. I don't want to keep on having to ask this lady, she's my queen, but I don't have to keep on going to ask for something that is a basic need. And then what happens is that they end up with a side thing because they don't want to keep getting rejected, or they may ask and they're getting rejected, or the sister not interested yet. But you know what I mean? So what happens is the brethren end up with a side thing, and then the side thing end up with a belly, and the cycle repeats. So these are things that, again, if we're looking to make improvements, you know what I mean? Because the hypocrite thing that happens is that everybody trying to be righteous, but the outcome does not reflect. You know what I mean? So something in there was there that wasn't being addressed. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm talking about the
Well,
physical intimacy
I
part.
think that's excellent. I think that's an excellent point to make because people should ask each other, those types of questions. But I do think that the focus should be on sacred intimacy, and what that looks like. Because I talk to plenty women, right? And that isn't being explored enough, right? Because, and then you got to realize that intimacy for a woman means something else for a man, right? And so it's like two different languages, right? And so we all have to learn like that one language, right, that allows us to communicate properly in that perspective. So I definitely think that that's something, and I don't think that there's any topic that really is taboo. I think that all things, important should be discussed because, like you said, that's one of the reasons why things fall apart. It's because, there's a lot of pretense, right? Instead of, just being real. So definitely, those things should be. And then remember too, because I'm advocating for the 50 and older group, right? And so you also have to remember that during this time, women are going through menopause, perimenopause, right? So then that men have to be conscious because I can't tell you how many sistren are so frustrated because brethren don't understand what's happening to the woman biologically, right, at that juncture in her life. So yeah.
It's serious, it's real. And a lot of time, brethren, this is why you find brethren going for the younger sister. It's for some of these reasons as well. So there has to be a level of overstanding as Rastafari people. We have to bring some topics out of the taboo category and start to discuss it, because a lot of thing is people don't want to feel judged. You know what I mean? Somebody may have a high drive for intimacy and you don't want to feel like you can't yada sign with a carnal mind. You feel away, you know what I mean? But that might be you have a high metabolism, you are healthy person, and you know what I mean, that's how you communicate. As I say, for a lot of brethren, that's how they feel close with their significant other, so there has to be that reasoning, communication. There's gonna have to be compromise. It's nice to say honorable compromise. There's nothing wrong with honorable compromise. But too often we don't talk about these topics. We want to stay on the spiritual side. And there's, as you say, there's spiritual arts. You have the tantric arts. You have different spiritual practices within intimacy that you can learn together and practice together as well. But if you don't have the reasoning, you know what I mean, the Tao, you know what I mean, there are certain ancient heights within intimacy that have been practiced for thousands of years. But if you don't reason, these are the things that separate relationships, and then people that sneak around and we got problems. You know what I mean?
And too, the Dejazmatch, there are going to be some relationships where some sistren and even brethren are going to say no intimacy before marriage. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like that's a real thing. you know. And again, I talk to different ones. I also talk to a lot of brethren too, because with my work, brethren are just interested in understanding what does the divine feminine really look like within Rastafari. They want to know if it's feminism couched in something else. So I have a lot of brethren who ask questions too. And so that's one of the things that I hear too is some of these sisters want to wait until you're married to them, and is that realistic? And so yeah, you're gonna find all types, just like you do in Christianity and different things. And that's why you have to reason up front to see what it is.
Yes, and the vetting protocols, as you say,
Hmm.
making sure that we have the vetting protocols. And I think if everyone is just truthful, you know, that's the key. You know what I mean? Don't
Yeah, don't front.
yeah, exactly. Don't front. Don't fake the funk, as they would
That's
say.
right. I was gonna say that part. You made yourself with that one. I wasn't gonna do
Yeah. You know what I mean? But that's real. You know what I mean? And I'm
it.
glad that we can have these reasonings, and I want to have the idea come forward so we can continue. And that's why I started this show, Lion Love, because I realized there's nobody, I mean, zero people tackling this, in mainstream Rastafari culture. And it's because there's so much wounds, there's so much, things that have happened, um, you know, and give thanks. I've avoided some of these things through the powers of the majesty. Being with my high school sweetheart, His Majesty made that happen. So I can come with an unbiased kind of approach. Nobody can pull out a skeleton palm eye, you know what I mean? So I give thanks for that, and just trying to help, especially the younger brethren, because the younger brethren are suffering right
Right.
now in the computer age, trying to find love. And
Mm.
it's very difficult, you know what I mean, to find a sister, because Rastafari is so far off of what sisters are looking for in the mainstream right now. It's
Mhm.
rough for a lot of the young brethren, them, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And this is why I say the purpose is so important, building your economic base. As we said, to start, His Majesty said it was only after he had settled in the
Yes,
governorship
sir.
of Marar,
Mhm.
and had made certain achievements. He had certain achievements under his belt at that time that he felt that he was worthy
Mhm.
to seek a wife. You know what I mean? So we have to delay gratification, um, purpose over pum pum. Um, we have to be disciplined, de-disciplined. You know what I mean, brethren? You have to be disciplined. It hurts, I know, sometimes physical, but you have to be disciplined. Read, exercise, divert that sexual energy into, transmute it into creating something productive.
Mhm.
Be out there, expending your energy with low frequency people, and then you get tied to someone who is low frequency with a child, and I've seen it mash up brethren. You know what I mean? Child support, this, that, take you into spaces you would have never go into, interactions with family members that you would have never interact with, but because you had a moment of pleasure, you put
Mhm.
yourself into, you know what I mean, a lifetime of conflict. You know what I mean? So these are the things that for young brethren, we're
Mhm.
appealing. And again, we're providing a solution. Is there any final songs that you want to share around matchmaking and how we move forward, how we move the nation forward?
Well, I just want to say, like how you mentioned the brethren, I just want to say that the sistrans too are going to have to hold themselves accountable. You know, oftentimes what I see with sistren is that After one relationship is sealed up, then nobody wants to be alone, and you jump into something else instead of taking that time to step back, because after every relationship you are a different you understand? And so ones have to take the opportunity to go within, to ask themselves, okay, because I don't believe in any relationship one person is to blame. You understand? Now, one person might have initiated something, but you allowed it to happen, right? So I think that a lot of that needs to be done. A lot of healing needs to be done, because if not, we become like Erica Badu says, and become bag ladies, right? So that time, and I think that that's the time that you should be reaching out to like a Lalabella Institute and saying, you know what, sis, I've just gone through something, you know what I'm saying? I need to be able to heal myself. Can you recommend certain spiritual practices or spiritual baths or whatever, But sistren, I'm not letting us off of the hook either, because if we don't do that self-healing, what we end up doing is attracting the same energy, because this thing is not even about the physical anymore, the same energy over and over again. So I would just ask brethren and sistren, right, to just really go within and to put, ego aside, to put soft feelings aside, thin skin aside, and really do a self-assessment. Ask yourself, are you really ready for a relationship? You might be lonely. That's one thing, right? But are you really ready? What will you be bringing to the table? Do a self-assessment. And that's one of the things that we do as well. Really take stock of who you are right now. Ask yourself who you would like to be. And do you think partnering with someone or marrying with someone, right, is going to help you ascend and reach that next level? Let's just be honest, right? And so I think that that's one of the best things that we could do for each other before we waste somebody's time, before we damage someone else, right? Just go within and take that time. Sometimes it'll take you 6 months. Being alone, it is not easy, but that's where your village comes in, right? And we have to be patient when that sister calls you and she's telling you that same story over and over about him. Don't laugh, Dejazmatch. And you want to say, girl, you told me this already, right? Just be patient, because she's going through her healing process.
Yes,
It's the
yes.
same thing with the brethren. You understand? And let's support each other, because the ultimate goal is to have better versions of ourselves, and then those better versions connect, right? So that we can become a trinity or a unity.
And a powerful nation. So
Yes.
all of this, let's keep this in mind, that relationships are the building blocks of family. Family is the building block of the nation. So it's bigger than any individual component. And I think once we keep that in mind, then that gives us the empathy to listen to someone, to help another person heal,
Yes.
to ensure and to try to, even if we come together, try to leave a person better than you found them. You know what I mean? That
Yes.
should be the principle, because not everything is going to work. We have to be realistic.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you might come together and something physical might happen and it don't work out. However, it should never be an animosity, or I'm trying to hurt this person, or I'm lying to this person, or it should be in truth and in fullness, and we try to leave each other better and to build up people for the next person who they encounter. That is how I always thought about it. I have many sisters that I tried with, that I was that masculine energy for them within a space of time for their child. You know what I mean? And I took that very seriously. You know what I mean? Not trying to take advantage, even though, and this is when I was a young Ras, enough of them used to like me too, but I knew it wasn't my queen. So I couldn't dabble, because once you go double, then you're going to create feelings, and you're creating that baggage, as you say. So we have to be mindful of that as well as brethren, if you're not, if you know in your heart this sister cannot be your sister, don't take it to a physical place, even if she's offering you that opportunity. You know what I mean? So these are the things that, as a nation, you know, caring for each other, we have to implement so that we can reach that great, plateau that is destined for us, and this golden age that His Majesty has uttered is upon Africa. So, any final word sound before we seal up? It's so irie the reason it can go on and on, but we want to keep it short and sweet. Any final? What's your? Oh, please tell the people how they can spend some money with the Eye and Lalabella Institute. What's happening, and then give us your final song.
Okay, so you can find Lalabella Institute online at lalabellainstitute.com or lalabellainstitute.org. All right, you can go there, you can look at some of the courses. You can also reach out to me via email at lalabella.org@gmail.com. I'm very open to any, to questions and consultations, and so I can be reached that way on Facebook. I am Jazanai Kush on Facebook. And on Instagram, we are Lalabella Institute. So those are all the ways that you can reach out. And my final word sound is, let love rule, let love abide. Let's just move throughout iration, with that type of energy, knowing that we're working on ourselves, trying to become members of that new race. And as a result, I believe in the law of attraction as well. And so I will attract like-minded individuals, right? But remember, that's like-minded. So wherever you are, mentally, right, spiritually, that's what you're going to bring. So, just pray, keep their Ivine Majesties, Haile Selassie, Empress Menen Aspa at the forefront of all things. And I truly and I truly believe that as a result of that, we will be able to emulate those beautiful relationships, that we see amongst our brethren and sistren, and first and foremost, be able to emulate the relationship that their Divine Majesty put before I and I.
You've heard it here. Lion Love, we are going into the relationship side of Rastafari. These are uncharted waters. I know a lot of the items are sitting in shock right now, saying them really a reason them thing, but we have to get used to it, family, because our business is not pretty. I tell the item the truth. As an attorney, I get a lot of classified information that people share with I because they know I wouldn't spread it, and the business is not pretty. We have to clean it up for the next generation. We gotta build. We gotta be truthful. We gotta touch the taboo topics, and we gotta build the Rastafari, the Pan-African family. You hear she says she's willing to entertain a Pan-African brethren. So if you're a bald brethren, you might have a chance if you get your thing together. When you come forward, I'm gonna ask the eye to give us what your ideal brethren looks like. And she's a part of the
did that one. You should have did that tonight.
All right, tell us before we go, before the final, what does the brethren have to look like, to get the attention of Ras and Jazanai? What kind of
Well, definitely, a Rastafari brethren would be my preference. Okay. A brethren who has done that self work that I talked about, a brethren who is able to, to be compassionate, right? To be overstanding and know that growth is inevitable, right? And so that both the man and the woman in the relationship should grow. A brethren who has planned for his future, right? So that he's not just thinking about now because, you know, there's a possibility that we may become one. Now he's trying to step it up, right? Because more than likely it's going to be difficult. So someone who is planned, someone definitely who emulates first, I should have started off with this first, Haile Selassie the first, in all things, right? Who looks at his selected speeches and knows the thoughts and the ways of the king, right? Someone who understands that Empress Menen is Ivine and that I am her representative, right? And so that our coupling is just that representation of Karamawi Haile Selassie and Empress Menen. And so moving together like that, you know, there can be no failure. Definitely someone who is Africa bound, someone who has prepared for repatriation, you know, and you know, yeah, the list goes on and on and on. But I'll stop.
What is the money requirement? How much money this man have to make to be comfortable with a Rasta? Can he work at Home Depot? What are we talking about here?
Well, you know, that's a really good question, but I would say that he has to be financially solid, right? I can't really put a dollar amount on it, but he has to know that, you know, I have prepared myself, right, by working and securing my future, and hopefully he has done the same.
So a functioning adult, financially independent.
Definitely.
Yes.
Because I like nice things. You understand? I like trips. You know, I like, you know, going out to eat at, you know, fine vegan establishments or ITIL establishments. You know what I'm saying? I like nice jewelry and clothes. I mean, you know, I'm a Rossette.
Okay. And does he have to support the Lion Voice Network? Say yes.
Absolutely. That's a deal breaker. If he doesn't, then it's a wrap.
So you hear that, family? This is the reality. So we got a good viewpoint there, and I don't think anything is unreasonable. And the beautiful thing now is that we're global. You know what I mean? I had a brethren in the Lion Pride tell me he missed the town hall meeting because he's in Australia and it's like 3 a.m. when we have it, but he said he's gonna set his alarm. So you know what I mean, this is a global, so maybe it would have been tough if you live in Florida to find a brethren in Florida, but now we have a global family, you know what I mean? And you know, people are only a plane ride away. We're all trotting home to Africa, most of I and I who are like-minded. So there's so much possibility right now for connection. So I'm excited about what the future holds. I'm excited for this collaboration with Lalabella Institute because I was thinking, how are we gonna facilitate that? But there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Lalabella Institute already set up for that. So we just funnel the couples there. So I feel so beautiful about this episode, and give thanks for the eye time and for the eye wise mind, you know what I mean? So Lion Pride family, the movement continues, the revolution is in full swing. We are here. Why? Because the time has come for the lions to tell our own story, and this is the Lion's Voice.
Lion Voice. Well, Haile Selassie the first of the Almighty, and this is the Dejazmatch Kwasi, and the mission, that's the restoration of the black family. Yeah. Who ja bless me, say no one curse. Black woman, it's time to merge. Black redemption, we're on the verge. Well, I don't care what you heard. Haile Selassie first, him no second or third. Cause even when their lines are blurred, the eyes stand straight, no bend, no curve. And him give you the love you deserve. Him don't come fi dominate, him come fi serve. Showed us the way home, I live his words, but I can't do it alone, so black woman, let's merge. High tall, sip and herbs, we merge. Massage fi calm her nerves, we merge. Together all demon purge, we merge. Another family emerge, we merge. We spoke and no speech was slurred, we merge. We agreed that Babylon's absurd, we merge. We had pain now, we feel cured, we merge. Hail the king now, she conquered. Well, I don't care what you heard. Haile Selassie first, him no second or third. Cause even when their lines are blurred, the eyes stand straight, no bend, no curve. And him give you the love you deserve. Him don't come fi dominate, him come fi serve. Showed us the way home, I live his words, but I can't do it alone, so black woman, let's merge. We met, something was stirred, we merge. Can't forget things that occurred, we merge. Take plane and start fly like bird, we merge. Friends and family observe, we merge. Them a spend while we conserve, we merge. From our goals we were not deterred, we merge. Till our energy transferred, we merge. Now our memories converge.